how Arsenal could do with a Mohamed Salah up front right now, but they
Absolutely.
they didn't. They had a Mikel Merino up front against West Ham. We weren't sure which path Arteta was going to go down with that. He went with Merino from the start, dropped Sterling to the bench. That didn't work out. It was, I think, 20 shots against West Ham as a team, 10 blocked, two on target. So what can he do now, Mikel? Does he have to stick with Merino up front, bring Sterling back in, hope that Merino can maybe make an impact off the bench against a tired defence like against Leicester? Or I think today he said, Merino can still play that false nine role. So, I mean, what does he do?
I really don't know. Honestly, I've got to do my predicted 11 for this tomorrow, and I don't know what I'm going to go with at this point. I was very confident he'd bring Marino in for the West Ham game. Look, Marino had very little to work with against West Ham. He did look a little bit like a fish out of water, though, I have to admit. And I was worried ahead of the game that was going to happen because you can come on and make an impact against Leicester, who are a dreadful team, by the way. No disrespect to Leicester fans, but they are a dreadful team. And Arsenal made them look pretty ordinary for 80 minutes. Sorry, and Leicester made Arsenal look pretty ordinary for 80 minutes in that game, which says a lot. But you can come off the bench in that sort of situation and do something. Starting games is very, very different when you're a midfielder and you've never played up front. And he did very much look like a midfielder who had never really played up front before. There was times where I'm convinced that he'd forgotten he was playing up front because West Ham would break and Marino would be charging back to his own penalty area to try and stop it. And you're thinking, hold on, you're number 9 today. You don't need to do that. Get up front. Um, so I don't know what he's going to do tomorrow. I really don't. He did also speak in a press conference. He was asked about changing formation, and it's something the more the weeks go by, I really feel is a potentially good option for Arsenal. You still have to find a forward in that formation, and it still might be Marino, but maybe you can get someone who plays a little bit more close to him centrally. If you go with a wing back system and kind of have a whatever you want to call it, in or out of possession, 5-3-2, 3-4-3, whatever. But you could potentially get someone playing off Marino, a Nwaneri or someone like that, and use Ben White and potentially Kieran Tierney as wing backs to get down and provide the threat. I really feel like that needs to be in the conversation with Arsenal because I just don't think the options they have now. I just don't think it's viable really for 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks in a row. I think they've really got to think about changing things. So I think he'll probably start with Marino again, just because there's no one else, and I just don't think Sterling comes into the conversation at the moment, such as his form. But yeah, it's a struggle. It really is a struggle to decide what to do.
Definitely. Well, you say there are no options. There is one, albeit one who's not very experienced at all in Nathan Butler Oyedeji. Made his debut against Dinamo Zagreb in the Champions League, but he's just been an unused substitute in the Premier League, and he's got very good numbers at under 21 level this season. I know the jump from under 21 to the first team is a big, big jump, but the fact that he's the only real out and out number nine and he's not been used, is it fair to say that he is just there to make up the numbers right now?
It feels like that. I mean, look, I haven't seen loads of him in my time. I've seen bits and pieces of him with the youth teams, but Arteta, if you're not using him now when you've got no forwards, then I think that says an awful lot. Like, I think there was a chance that he was going to get released in January before, and his contract's up at the end of the season. I don't think there's any realistic possibility of that being of him getting a new one. So I think he's on his way out at Arsenal now again, which I think tells the story of exactly how they feel about him and whether he's ready for this level. If you were him, you'd probably be sitting there a little bit disappointed, thinking, "Come on, just give me a chance." You never know what could happen, and could he do any worse than what anyone else is doing at the moment? I don't know. I don't think we're at that stage yet. But if he sticks with the Marino experiment for another couple of games and we get very similar results to what we saw against West Ham, then maybe he does come into the equation. And if Arsenal don't get any results in the next couple of weeks, even Arteta can't sit in front of the cameras and say, "Over my dead body, the title's not over." He will know it's over. So then maybe you do try something out over the final game. So, but yeah, I don't think realistically he is the guy.
Hmm. And I hate to, sound like a broken record here, but going back to the January transfer window and what Arteta, how he might say something publicly, but then he'll have different feelings towards it. So, of course, after the West Ham game, he was asked about the injuries up top and the lack of options. He was saying he refused it completely. It's the players that he put out on the pitch that should be delivering. They didn't hit the standards he set. So, like you say, publicly he'll say one thing, but privately, in January he was always, as you said previously, he was sort of begging for a new attacker to arrive. that didn't happen. So, do you think privately he will be, I don't want to say furious, but just, peeved that he has the options, the limited options that he's currently got now?
Yes, absolutely. But I do think that it's a collective thing. Arteta is such a powerful figure at the club now that he will have a big say in how things are done. January was always difficult. I still go back to the summer. I still feel the mistakes were made in the summer, and it is very much, hindsight is a wonderful thing and everything like that. But I do feel they'll look back at the summer now and think that's where we got it wrong. And in the Premier League, if you get a summer wrong, it takes a long way to recover for that. You basically have to wait till the following summer. You can try and do bits and pieces in January to rectify it, but it's always very difficult. The summer is where you have to do your business and you have to get it right. Largely, Arsenal have got it right in the last few years, but I think this summer they will look back on it and think, you know what, we maybe dedicated too much time and too much resources to players and positions where we should have favoured getting something sorted for the other. They tried to get Sesko, that didn't happen, but they had a long time to think, okay, we can't get him. Do we really have to wait for Benjamin Sesko another year, or shall we pivot and go and do something else that gives us the best possible opportunity this season? They didn't do that, and Arteta will be very much involved in that decision making process. So I still look at it more as a summer issue than a January issue. But I think when you get to January in this point, there was an opportunity, albeit a difficult one for Arsenal, to do something to give themselves the best possible chance in January. To do nothing, I think was a real gamble, and it's a gamble that clearly has backfired pretty spectacularly at this point. And a lot of people will say it is difficult. You don't want to just get anyone for the sake of it. I get that, but the loan market was open abroad. You can't tell me there was no one abroad who would help you in the second half of the season not have to play a central midfielder as a forward. There has to be players there available, even if they're not at the standard to help Arsenal for 2, 3, 4 years, just for 6 months to give yourself other options. There definitely has to be people available there, and they didn't. They chose not to do it for whatever reason.